Her mind was tired. Her legs were weak. She found it hard to breathe, but she kept walking through the freezing temperatures of the forest, looking around for any signs of life. Her throat was sore, and she had been calling the soldiers' names for hours on end, as she was weakly limp, trying to walk as straight as she could, praying that someone would hear her. She could feel her pulse throbbing in her head as her mind began to wander. She shook her head, trying to keep focus as her eyelids grew heavy. Rainbow Dash found herself growing more and more tired with every step she took. Every time she lifted her hoof, it felt like her leg was made of thick lead. After 3 steps, she couldn't carry on. Rainbow Dash tried rocking back and forth, hoping the momentum would help her, but her legs felt like they were bound to the wet grass below. She sobbed before collapsing to the ground. She couldn't care less about her coat. She just wanted to feel safe, like she did when she was curled up close to Sergeant Bishop as he slept. Then, thoughts of Bishop crept into her mind. She remembered how he screamed in agony as bullets tore through his flesh in his back as he held her to his chest, like he was her shield. Was he alive? If so, how bad was he hurt? And what's going to happen between him and Dixon? She remembered the unbearable tension as both men stared down the barrels of their guns, neither of them backing down despite the raging battle commencing around them. She began to think of Dixon, if he was really capable of killing the sergeant. Dixon was taller, younger, and had a bit more bulky physique. After seeing him mercilessly slaughter 5 men, she began to worry if he could kill the 3 soldiers left in the platoon. 1 gravely injured, or dead, and 2 who weren't as strong, cold, and anywhere near as heartless as Dixon was. All these thoughts only drove her to summon the strength to carry on. As she was doing a 100th press up, she used every ounce of her strength to stand up, placing each hoof in its correct place before staring into the dark depths of the woods. She growled. She threw herself forward, but her front legs didn't follow. She fell to the ground with a thud, slamming her head against a fallen tree. She yelped, grabbing her muzzle. Pain spread across her mouth. She felt something, and she spat something solid and bloody from her mouth before she realized it was a tooth. She could feel the gap left behind in her mouth, and she gasped as she looked at her reflection in the puddle, seeing it was one of her 2 front teeth that was missing. Usually, she wouldn't panic at such an incident. The dentists back in Equestria could solve this incident with simple magic, but she didn't know how long she would look like this, or if she would even return to her home again. She couldn't hit a tree with her hoof in frustration if she wanted to. Her body was now nothing more than a helpless rag doll. She felt herself falling into unconsciousness if she knew she could fall asleep in this cold weather. And she knew that if she did, she would freeze to death. She closed her eyes, feeling drops of rain patter against her head, feeling ashamed that she was reduced to wallowing in a muddy puddle. She saw the blood in her mouth as it pooled into the brown water, swirling around, feeling her life slowly drain away with it. Her whole body began to shake violently. She clenched herself into a ball, her teeth jittering as she whimpered to herself. I just want to go home. She no longer had enough energy to speak, whine, or even cry. All she could do was rest, her teary eyes, hoping it wouldn't take long, and hoping that the pain would go away. The torturing pain would finally stop. The last thing she remembered before she closed her eyes was the warmth of Bishop's body against hers as she felt safe for the first time. Rainbow Dash bled a tear, closing her eyes as she smiled, repeating the treasured memory over and over again until she drifted into a cold, dark slumber. Tuesday the 5th. 9 p.m. My name is David M. Bishop. When I first set foot on German soil, I wasn't afraid or intimidated by the enormity of their situation. It was just a simple rescue mission, nothing more. We were assigned to retrieve an American spy, some guy called Thomas. He was captured by Nazi forces, and he was monitoring our activities. He provided us with all the information we needed to stay one step ahead, to help assist our allies in this unforgiving war. But after losing 3 men, suffering countless casualties, and going through 6 countries, we found him, beaten, tortured, and killed. We failed our mission, and now we need to get out of this hellhole to deliver the bad news. Right now, there are only 4 of us left. Captain Matt Finn John was killed in action as we were trying to make our way towards Norden, where we were denied an extraction. We were then attacked by an enemy platoon. We found transport and managed to escape. Unfortunately, I was wounded in the process. Sergeant Cole did a good job of patching me up, despite our lack of medical resources. I currently have no feeling in my left arm, and I'm finding it difficult to breathe. I don't know whether I'll survive the night. The pain is indescribable, and Cole thinks I may have internal bleeding. I guess I'll have to wait and see. In this war, I've seen things no man should see. I've watched mangled soldiers screaming in agony because their bodies were riddled with bullets and white-hot shrapnel. Men being vaporized by trip mines, and some men being burnt to death. I don't think I'll ever forget that smell. But after a while, I felt myself growing numb, almost like I was getting used to the crawling through the blood and gore of other soldiers. I killed men without a single thought. I thought I was slowly growing insane. That was until I met her. Back when we found Thomas, we also found a prisoner, but this is going to sound crazy. She was a pony. Well, that's what she said she was. Damn, I've gotten so used to her that it almost seems natural to me. She was a pony that could talk. She was blue and had rainbow hair. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. I thought that my ever-decreasing sanity had finally snapped, but everyone else could see her too. She is from another world. She told me that she was from a place called Equestria, a place of peace and harmony and magic. At first, I found that hard to believe, but then again, there was no other explanation to how she got here. The captain decided that we should help her. Saving someone is better than saving no one. She was a stubborn soul. She had a teenager's personality, but, unfortunately, she also had a teenager's mind. She had never experienced war before, and I could see the damage it was doing to her. In a way, she saved my life. She helped me feel again. I could talk to her like any other person. When our platoon was sleeping in the hospital at Norden, I woke up to see her curled up beside me. It was probably the most heartwarming experience I've ever had in this war. It was a surprise to me at first, but it was obvious in the end. She always stayed close to me, like I was her guardian. She trusted me, and that's what saved my life. I no longer saw myself as a heartless soldier who killed as naturally as he breathed. I was a man, following orders, nothing more, nothing less. That night, when I made it to my duty to protect her. But I couldn't. The next morning, we were attacked by that enemy platoon we saw earlier today. And we were separated. I don't know where she is now, whether she's dead or alive. I'm just praying to God that those bastards didn't find her. God knows what they'll do to her. Kill her, experiment on her, or even torture her because she's different. The thought of that just makes me sick to my stomach. As much as my heart yearns to go back and look under every blade of grass until I find her, I cannot risk losing any more men. I have no choice but to carry on without her, and that's what's breaking my heart. knowing she's out there, looking for me in the rain, scared and upset, maybe angry. I just hope that she's safe, or, by some miracle, she's gone back to her home in the world. It's now 9:15 p.m. I need to get some rest before we move out tomorrow, so I'm going to wrap this up. If I survive the night, I'm going to make this a regular thing. I find it to be very therapeutic, and if I somehow survive this war, I'll have something to look back on. Something I can be proud of, because, once again, I can feel myself slowly slipping away. And whoever reads this, whether it is I or someone who finds this on my body, Sergeant David and Bishop. Tuesday the 6th, 7 o'clock a.m. I guess this means I'm alive. Didn't get much sleep last night. I spent most of my time trying not to scream because of the pain in my chest. I need to get to a hospital, which is ironic, considering we were in one not just 24 hours ago. We tried looking for supplies, but it looks like the entire building was cleared out during the evacuation. I've had a lot of time to think to myself lately, and I find myself looking at the stars. I've always liked to look into the night sky, but I get bored after 3 hours. So I decided to do something I haven't done in a while. I drew a picture. When I was a carpenter, I used to draw a lot of floor plans and houses, sketching blueprints for furniture. My wife always said I should make a living of it. But I just drew or saw sketching as a job rather than a hobby. I've always had an image in my mind for quite some time now. I just can't seem to get it out, so I decided to draw it. I can remember when I was back in the hospital. I was cleaning the guns whilst Cole was looking around the hospital for some painkillers. Rainbow Dash was in the room with me, and she didn't say anything the whole time, watching me as I did my job. I just remember, for that split second, when I turned around to look at her, and she was looking at me with those sad eyes. That image just stuck in my mind ever since. I thought I might as well draw it. Maybe it'll help me accept that I might not see her again. But I'll never forget her. I tried to draw every detail I could remember. The small pile of rocks, the detail of the gun, and the large building visible through the hole in the wall. After 10 minutes, I had finished. Not exactly how I remembered, but close enough. And I was a bit pissed off by the smudge, but I can always redraw it if I want to. I'm going to stick it in this journal for now, and hopefully I can have it as a picture on my desk at home. If it's still there, that is. It's strange. After everything I've seen and been through, I don't think I've felt this sad from losing someone I know in this war. I guess I grew numb to the feelings because I've lost so many people in the war. My father, my uncle, my daughter. After that, I didn't feel the pain anymore. It was nothing but an empty shell that had all its emptiness torn away. Everything I have loved dissected from my life until I had nothing left. That's why I took care of Rainbow Dash, as best I could. She helped me to feel again. But now, she's gone. I know there was nothing I could have done to save her. I guess it's best if I just let go and say to myself that she's gone. It's what I've always done. Otherwise, I'd go mad, trying to think where in the forest she was. I'll miss you, Rainbow. Sergeant David and Bishop. Later that morning, Sergeant Cole was inspecting Bishop's wounds as the injured soldier was propped up against a tree, looking into the distance, trying to ignore the indescribable pain. As Bishop caught a glimpse of Dixon cleaning his weapon in the distance, Sergeant Bishop stared at the rebellious soldier as Dixon returned the gaze. "What are we going to do about him?" Sergeant Cole asked. Bishop paused, looking at Dixon, before he broke eye contact and turned away. I don't know, Cole. I don't think we're in a position to make any rash decisions. Rash decisions? What are you talking about? He's lost it, Bish. He's a drunk, and he's dangerous. Bishop paused, looking at his surroundings before looking at Dixon again. A question then entered his mind, idly circling around before he looked at the ground. What would you do? Sir? If you was captain and you had the choice, what would you do? Honestly, I would have cut the bastard's throat in his sleep a long time ago. The wounded sergeant then stood up before Cole could finish his work. Bishop stumbled, still unsteady, walking by himself. He looked at Dixon again, before turning to Cole, anger and frustration clear in his eyes. And that's exactly why you'd never expect to become captain. As much as we all hate his guts, he's still one of us, Cole. He has a family in Mississippi. I have family too, sir. And so do you, and Andy. I know it's not right, but isn't it logical? Who knows what's going through his head? You've seen what he's capable of, what he can do. What happens when it's you that he goes after next? Then I'll snap his neck the next chance I get. But as of now, he's still part of this team. He'll get his comeuppance when he serves his sentence at home. That's my point, sir. Right now, we're the only people in the world who have seen him commit his crimes. What if he doesn't want to serve his sentence? Sergeant Bishop didn't reply. He heard footsteps come from behind. He turned to see the intoxicated soldier walking up behind him. Sergeant Bishop stood his ground before Dixon, then walked past him, a smirk on his face. Dixon chuckled before holstering a pistol. Pardon me. You know that feeling you get when you know someone's talking about you? It's funny, isn't it? You might think you're in control, David, but you're no more of a soldier than I am. Looks like Japs and Nazis aren't my only enemy. Trust me, Bishop. I might not be your friend, but you sure as fuck don't want me as an enemy. After all. Dixon then patted Bishop on his wounded shoulder, making the sergeant wince in pain. You're not looking too good, old man. Bishop quickly grabbed Dixon's hand with a firm grasp before pulling it away from his shoulder. Sergeant Cole watched. His hand was hovering over his sidearm as the two men stared at each other. Bishop, with a look of rage in his face, and Dixon's grin receding into a sinister scowl as Bishop refused to let go of his hand. Listen to me, dick. Don't forget the situation we're in. I don't think you're in the position to be threatening me, especially with two armed officers close by, who are more than willing to shoot the reckless son of a bitch like you. So right now, you can take your bullshit threats, your bullshit excuses, and your bullshit attitude to someone who gives the slightest fuck what you think. I'm not the enemy, you stupid fuck. The enemy is out there, waiting for you. And don't you dare fucking touch me again. Sergeant Cole was now holding his pistol. Dixon was now centimeters from Bishop's face, both men standing tall as they stared each other down. Bishop then let go of Dixon's hand before pushing him away. Without skipping a beat, Dixon then spat on the sergeant's shoes before he growled. From now on, you best stay the fuck away from me. All of you. Dixon looked at Cole, seeing that he was holding his pistol, before turning away, walking back to where he stood before. Sergeant Bishop then held his shoulder, rubbing it as he turned to Cole, who stood behind him. Let me see that. Sergeant Bishop limped towards the tree before his legs collapsed under his weight, making him fall to the ground with a deep shout in agony. Cole was quick to run to his aid, as Bishop tried to push himself up from the ground. Tears of pain freshened his eyes. Cole carefully avoided his bullet wounds as he helped turn the wounded sergeant on his back. As Cole inspected Dixon's handiwork, Sergeant Bishop coughed up a mouthful of blood. Shit. How do you feel, Bish? Do you feel numb? Bishop tried to talk, but his voice was a mix of painful coughs as tearful cries. The sergeant's heart sank when he realized what was happening. Fuck. Looks like one of those bullets grazed your lungs. Pretty fucking badly as well. You're going to have to take it easy. By the looks of things, you need to keep your heart rate down, or the wound is only going to get bigger. Bishop kicked the floor in anger. He clenched his fists as the pain and rage before screaming into the tree before his body went limp. Sergeant? Yes? Forget what I said. I hope that motherfucker burns and... Fuck! Bishop couldn't control his body as he shook violently, clenching his teeth and squeezing Cole's jacket, as he couldn't help but scream. The shrapnel in his torso was churning in his flesh with every move he made. Cole could do nothing but hold the sergeant down as a tear rolled down his cheek. Cole closed his eyes. Seeing the sergeant sobbing while squirming in a puddle of his own blood was a sight he just couldn't bear. The sergeant was beaten, bloody, mangled, and heartbroken. All Bishop wanted was to see the blue Pegasus by his side, just to give him the push he needed, the strength to carry on. But she was gone, and all Bishop had left was the pain. The never-ending, torturing, excruciating pain.